Today, we are taking motivation apart. We're going to skip all the hacks, the tricks, and that constant search for inspiration. Instead, we're going to find something way more powerful, a source of drive that never, ever runs out. Because, well, it's already built right into your biology.
Okay, let's just dive right into this paradox because it's at the heart of everything. Most of us treat our drive like it's a phone battery. We run it all the way down, and then we try to recharge it by plugging it into some external reward. A paycheck, that vacation, even just a piece of cake. But what if that very act of recharging is actually what's draining the battery for good? Think about a kid who loves to draw. They can get lost in it for hours, right? But the moment you start paying them $1 for each picture, it's not about the joy anymore. It becomes a transaction. And just like that, the magic is gone. Every single time you bribe yourself to get a job done, you're quietly teaching your brain that the work itself has no value without a prize.
And this brings us to a frustratingly common experience. It's that feeling when something you once absolutely loved, a passion, a hobby, starts to feel like a chore. And this isn't just a vague feeling. It's a real, well-documented psychological phenomenon, and it has a name. So think about it for a second. Maybe for you, it was playing guitar or coding or writing stories. You did it for hours, completely lost in the process, driven by absolutely nothing more than just curiosity. But then something shifted. You started tracking your stats, chasing likes, or maybe you even turned it into a side hustle. And suddenly, the focus wasn't on the pure joy of doing it anymore. It was on the result you got from it. And just like that, the passion just evaporates. What you just experienced is exactly what psychologists call the over-justification effect. So what's really interesting is that this breaks down into two totally different systems your brain uses to figure out value. On one side, you have extrinsic value. This is the pellet, the paycheck, the trophy. It triggers what's basically a short-circuit reward. It's a quick hit of satisfaction for sure, but it fades fast, and it always leaves you needing another one. Then, on the other side, you have intrinsic value. This is the play, the process, the exploration. This taps into a deep, sustainable drive that actually generates its own energy. It's the kind that doesn't rely on some external prize to keep going. So what's actually happening inside your brain when that passion turns into a transaction? It's a simple but really powerful shift in focus. Once your brain identifies an external reward, it basically rewires its own sense of value. It stops caring about the satisfaction you get from the process itself and starts caring only about getting the prize. You essentially turned your creative playground into an assembly line. And the moment that transaction feels unfair or the reward just isn't good enough, motivation shuts down completely. And that's really the crucial point here. When we rely on external rewards, we are fighting our own biology. We're trading our natural, evolution-honed drive for curiosity and mastery for a really simplistic social script of productivity. And our brain, well, it's basically going on strike. It's tired of being treated like a vending machine, where you just punch in a goal and expect motivation to pop out. But what if we could rewire that whole thing? What if instead of fighting our own biology, we built a system that works with our brain's natural wiring?
All right, so this brings us to the solution, a sustainable motivation system we're going to call the AMP circuit. Now, I want you to think of this not as a battery you have to constantly charge, but as a biological engine that once it's started, actually generates its own power. This is a 4-stage biological process, and it works like a perfectly designed, self-sustaining circuit. Each stage flows right into the next, creating this awesome positive feedback loop that just strengthens itself over time. It literally feeds itself without ever needing an external reward to keep it going. Okay, let's actually look at how this circuit operates inside your head. It all starts with stage 1, the autonomy signal. This happens in your prefrontal cortex, which is basically the CEO of your brain, right? It handles your sense of self and your decisions. The moment it feels that you chose to do something, it gives the green light. That signal unlocks stage 2, flow engagement. Now your basal ganglia, the brain's center for habits and procedures, kicks in. When a task is perfectly matched to your skill level, this is what lets you enter the zone, where you lose all track of time. Then, that deep focus triggers stage 3, the endogenous reward. A tiny part of your brain called the ventral tegmental area starts releasing dopamine, that's the motivation molecule, while you're working, not after. The effort itself literally becomes the reward. And finally, all of this comes together in stage 4, mastery integration. Your hippocampus, which is like the brain's record keeper, registers that you just got a little bit better at something. This creates this powerful competence hit, reinforcing the entire loop and making you want to do it all over again. It's an incredible system. But why, right? Why would our brains even be designed this way in the first place? Why would evolution favor a system that finds joy in the work itself, completely separate from the outcome? The answer, it turns out, is pretty profound, and it's buried deep in our evolutionary past. So this is the why behind the entire AMP circuit. I want you to imagine two of our early ancestors. One of them only hunts when his stomach is rumbling. He's reactive. The other one, though, he spends his free time practicing throwing his spear, not for a meal, but just for the pure satisfaction of getting better at hitting his target. He's proactive. So when the long famine comes, who do you think survives? Our intrinsic drive, you see, isn't some modern luxury. It is an ancient survival mechanism. And this reveals what your brain truly prioritizes. It values potential over pellets. It knows deep down that the result, the kill, the trophy, the paycheck, all of that is temporary. It can be lost, it can be stolen, it can be spent. But the process, the skill, the hunt, that is a permanent neurological investment in you. Your brain rewards the hunt more than the kill, because a good hunter can always find another meal. It's building a foundation of competence. I really want you to let that sink in for a moment. The ultimate goal of this entire biological system isn't just to help you check off a to-do list or meet some quarterly goal. It's not about being productive in the way we think about it today. The deep evolutionary goal is to forge a more capable, more resilient, more adaptable version of you. Your brain isn't trying to make you productive, it's trying to make you invincible. So, okay, understanding the science is one thing, but how do we actually apply this? How do we stop pushing ourselves with this brittle, extrinsic motivation and start letting this powerful, intrinsic drive pull us forward instead?
Here are 4 really practical techniques to consciously activate the AMP circuit. First, there's the autonomy reframe. You take a task that you feel like you have to do, and you find a choice inside of it. Look, you can't choose not to do your taxes, but you can choose how, when, or where you do them. That little shift sends a huge signal to your prefrontal cortex. The second technique is called Goldilocks tasking, and it's a big one we're going to dive into next. Third, incentive decoupling. Stop promising yourself a treat for finishing. Instead, focus on the internal win. Ask yourself, what skill did I just sharpen? And finally, unpredictable rewards. When you celebrate, make it random and make it after the fact, so your brain doesn't learn to work only for the prize.
All right, so let's zoom in on this idea of Goldilocks tasking. This is all about finding that perfect sweet spot where the AMP circuit really fires up. If a task is too easy, you're in the boredom zone. If it's way too hard, you're in the anxiety zone, and you just shut down. But right there in the middle is the state of flow. Researchers estimate it's a challenge gap that's about 4% beyond your current skill level. So, for example, if you're learning to code, don't try to build an entire app from scratch, that's the anxiety zone. And don't just keep writing the same simple program over and over, that's boredom. Instead, find one small new function to write that just stretches your skills a tiny bit. That's the 4% gap. That's where flow lives. Okay, so this brings us to the final and maybe the most crucial takeaway in this whole process. And it requires a fundamental shift in how we even think about what motivation is. You know, we spend so much of our time and energy trying to find motivation, as if it's some treasure hiding under a rock, but it's not. It's an internal state. It's a biological fire. So your job isn't to win some prize at the end of the race. Your job is to protect that flame while you're running. The most powerful and sustainable energy you will ever find comes not from the prize, but from the person you are becoming while you're running the race. And that right there, that is the fundamental shift. The moment you stop chasing the external pellet and start focusing on the internal skill, you activate a system that has been fine-tuned by millions of years of evolution. You stop trying to buy your motivation, and you finally start to grow it. And so the question is no longer, how do I find motivation? The question becomes, what will I build with a drive that never, ever runs out?